This message today is about our children. Our children are in dire need of having a serious relationship with God. You can look at the crime that's being committed today by our youth because of their lack of understanding of who they are and who God is. So today I hope that you parents will be able to get something from this message to instill in your children. So God commands us to raise our children up in His Word. Proverbs 22:6 says, train up your child in the way that they should go, and when they are old, it will not depart from them. So He's talking about his spiritual upbringing. The child's spiritual knowledge of God will not depart from him. We're going to talk about Joseph, how Joseph was sold into slavery as a child. Joseph was a teenager, sold into slavery by his brothers. His brothers was jealous of him because of the relationship that he had with his father. And so they acted according to their evil intentions toward their youngest brother. So they sold him into slavery. Joseph was 16 or 17 years old when he was in slavery. So they sold him into slavery. He ended up in Egypt. And he became a servant over Potiphar's house. He was like the main servant over Potiphar's house. So you have a young boy who's a foreigner running Potiphar's household. But the scripture lets us know that God was with him. Potiphar's wife wanted to have sex with him because she had been watching him day in and day out. So he was a handsome young man. She was a heathen, ungodly woman, didn't know God, like a lot of women are today, trying to entice the man of God and trick him and lure him away from God. So she tried to have sex with Joseph. She was making sexual advances to Joseph daily, but Joseph resisted her. Joseph couldn't resist her had he not known God. Joseph was raised up in a godly household because he had a godly father. So he knew God, and he knew that having sex with someone else's wife was adultery. He knew that was wrong, so he didn't do it. How many young men today would have done what Joseph did? Joseph had a relationship with God, and he knew his God, Yahweh, the God of the Israelites. It's the husband's duty, the father, to teach your children the word of God. It's your duty to lead your families in Bible study, in worship, in prayer. It's your duty as fathers, as husbands, men of God, according to Ephesians 5:23. Are we really raising our children up knowing God? Look at the condition that our children are in today. Our children are shooting each other at a young age. A 13-year-old shooting, raping, and robbing because he doesn't know God. But then when you go back to his household is dysfunctional. Wherever God isn't, Satan is. Wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty, there's peace. So these children are living a wayward life. And I blame the parents for that, because they are not raising their children up knowing God. But first they need to know God. And then you'll be able to teach your children. A lot of these fathers today still want to act like kids. You want to rip and run the streets like you're a teenager. You want to cheat on your wife. You want to drink and get high and just neglect your family. Then when chaos happens, you want to cry and get on your knees and cry out to God. But you've been neglecting your family all of this time. You've been neglecting God all of this time. Today is the day for you fathers to get yourselves together and stop playing church. And stop going to church just to listen. Don't be like that man James said, looking in the mirror and seeing yourself, but then when you leave that mirror, you forget what you look like. So that's just like hearing the word and not being a doer of the word. You have young children today cursing their parents out, talking to their parents like they're friends, and being disobedient to their parents because they don't know God. It's very important to start while your child is young. Raise your child up in the Word of God. And when your child gets old, you won't have to worry about your child because you know what you instilled in your child as a kid. And when you go to church, make your children go to church. And just don't listen to the pastor. Learn from your pastor. Take that information home and teach your children. Have Bible study with your children. Teach your children how to pray. Teach your children how to study the Word of God. That is your duty. A godly household makes for a peaceful household. But when God is not in your house, chaos is. Fussing and fighting, bickering and arguing. It's in your household. God commands the children in the book of Exodus chapter 20 verse 12 to honor your mother and your father that your days may be long upon the land. Paul tells us in Ephesians 6:1, children, obey your parents in the Lord. Well, your children can't obey their parents in the Lord if they don't know the Word of God. If they don't know God, you can't honor your parents according to the Word if the Word is not in them, because what's in them should come out of them. You have to properly raise your children up in the Word. Because children, if you don't obey your parents, you will not live a peaceful life. You will not prosper in nothing that you do. Because God said, honor your parents, that your days may be long upon the land. Respect your elders. Respect yourself. Little girls, stop showing your breasts. Stop coming out the house half naked. Feeding the fire that's burning in these little young boys already. That's why they don't respect you. That's why they call you B's and H's. Because you come out the house dressed like one. In order for them to respect you, you have to respect yourself. But first you need to have the knowledge of God in you. So I beg you, in the name of God, fathers, teach your children who God is. Let God live inside of you. Let God have His way in you. And I thank you for listening.